are now live. Woo! Welcome everyone to the our very first Stencil office hours. Yeah, words are hard, right? I am joined by some new folks on the Stencil team. First off, I'm Mike Hartington, DevRel here at Ionic, helping people, make all sorts of great apps as fast as possible. I'm joined by two new faces to the company, and hopefully not the entire ecosystem, but if you haven't met them before, I'll let them introduce one another. We have Ryan Waskowitz and Will Riley. I'll let you both kind of take a little minute. Let the world know who you are. We'll start off with you, Ryan.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan, as Mike said. I am the team lead on the Stencil team. I've been at Ionic and working on Stencil for almost 2 months now. Prior to this, I was working in the autonomous vehicle industry, helping cars learn how to drive themselves. So this is a bit of a career pivot for me, but I'm super passionate about developer tooling and things that can really empower developers to, make awesome things. So I'm really excited to be here at Ionic and working on Stencil and getting to meet each and every one of you.
Awesome. Now, Will, let's tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Will. I have been using Stencil for, ever since since it first launched, and I was 2017, and prior to that, I was using a lot of Polymer, and I followed the web component spec as it was being worked on, and all through that process, and so. When I found Stencil, October 2017, when Max and Adam got on stage, I was just like, boom, this is it. This is what I want. And I've used it ever since.
Nice. So we have someone who's relatively new to the web component space, and someone who's I would say, an OG, if you've used Polymer before.
Yeah. And the HTML imports.
Let's not bring back memories of things that couldn't have existed. I kid. So I do want to know, coming from autonomous vehicles, what was the thing that made you want to come over to do that's a big shift.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's a huge shift.
Why?
Why not? It's Stencil, man. Come on. I think that so in my last role, I was doing both development in the AV space. I worked on a map engineering team, so it was how do you develop maps that go on the car that helps the car understand where it is in the world and the rules by which you're allowed to drive. Things that we as people learn when we're learning to drive, we understand how to stop at a stop sign and when we can make a right turn. But simultaneously, I was also doing a lot of developer tooling, for the company as a whole as it pertained to our entire tech stack. And I really kind of just fell in love with that type of role. And then off to the side, I've been kind of diving into, different programming language, techniques, compilers, theory behind all that. Was super interested. And then one day I saw the posting for, Stencil, and I was like, seems like a perfect fit. I got to reach out to these guys and see what we can do. And luckily, everything seemed to have worked out.
Well, you definitely found a good role with the compiler, considering how essential Stencil's compiler is to making everything kind of just work. Definitely picked a good time to join. So before we dive into it, this is an office hours. We're hoping to get these up and running on a monthly schedule, so that way people can come hang out, show off some cool things that they are working on in the community, make the team kind of available for some time to answer some questions, high-level questions. Unfortunately, not one-on-one support or helping you debug your app live on YouTube. We do want to hear from you, so we do have the little chat interaction. If there's anything in particular on the vision, I guess, of Stencil. Ask away. We want to know what you would like from the Stencil team, and how that fits into some of our planning. So let's kind of dive into it with a few things that I know that have been on our mind as a team, and that's kind of the future of Stencil and just the current status of Stencil, where you two are both newer to the team. So what are you working on? How come you haven't closed all these bugs?
That is an excellent question. So when Ionic as a company announced that we were going to be investing in Stencil and kind of doubling down on Stencil moving forward, they brought Will and I on to kind of start to just dive into the code base and start to make sense of things again. So right now, Will and I are investing a ton of time and resources into learning the compiler, understanding how things work together, while simultaneously try to do everything else. So right now, we're investing in the team. And what that means is the team is coming together. Will and I are learning how to best work together, how to best share knowledge, how to best get things through code review, things like that. Really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is build up sustainable engineering practices, because as stewards of this code base, we want to see it succeed, and we want to help propel this thing to the next level. So we're trying to start with a very solid foundation before we try to fight a million different fires throughout the code base. So we understand that it's been a little while since folks have been responding to various GitHub issues and PR requests. We're definitely aware of that. We're very cognizant of that. We appreciate your patience with us, and we're trying to make it the best headway that we can while doing all of this. In addition to that, we have been tackling some issues. So we've got community PRs and community issues that we have been looking at, which is a great way to help learn the code base and dive into new sections. We also have, internal customers. So we have the Ionic framework itself is the biggest customer of Stencil. So we've been meeting with them and seeing, what do they need? How can we best serve their needs? And then finally, we've got a few enterprise customers that, we've been looking into various issues and fixes for as well. Will, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, that sums it all up. Ultimately, yeah, thanks for the patience while we're working through everything, because there's plenty. And as a user of Stencil personally, over the past 4 years, yes, definitely, there are many things that I also have pains that everybody else recognizes. So we're getting there.
Yeah, I know there's definitely been like a few comments or just like questions from folks out there who are like, hey, I have this open issue, or I have this pull request that's been kind of just like sitting there for a bit. What's going on with that? And it's funny because I mentioned it the other day. It's like, well, people could just be merging things, but if the base and the foundation and everything isn't solid, what good is just merging every single PR?
Yeah,
sure,
like Ryan said,
your test pass, or sure, CI passes, but does it work?
And like Ryan said, we're stewards of this code base. We're the custodians. We need to make sure that this is the code isn't just like we're not just adding features to add features. We're being mindful of the direction of Stencil and the features and the functionality that can be improved and can be clarified or can be removed. Like that kind of stuff is exceptionally helpful. And it takes time. Like we have to have we have to be literate with Stencil and all of the code within the compiler and et cetera. And that's what we're building, like code literacy within the Stencil compiler. And so, yeah. Anything to tack onto that, Ryan?
I don't think so. No, I think that sums it up pretty well.
No, we're having a little.
You might need to reconnect your headphones again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were trying this earlier, and there's some technical difficulties. So hardware, much like software, is not perfect.
Yeah. And considering this is the first one, I'm glad, thanks for the patience while we're figuring it all out. my headphones also, mic didn't work, so I'm using my MacBook mic.
Oh no!
I know. Well,
can you hear me?
I know.
Well, it is.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you, Ryan.
All right, excellent.
Cool. So other than just working on where the team is now and trying to get up and running, what are some other things that you have been kind of doing? I've noticed a lot of internal documentation and just trying to understand how everything's been going. Can you tell the folks a little bit about that process?
Yeah, Will, if you want to, I think you've been kind of spearheading that. If you want to talk a little bit about that documentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things that personally I felt needed to be, we needed to figure out how to communicate some weird, complex things that were in the code that weren't directly understandable without, really getting into the code and using it, effectively improving the code literacy of everything. I introduced something called ADRs. ADRs are architecture decision records. And what they do is they try to help document those hard to document things, basically those decisions that we make as developers on a day-to-day basis that impact areas of the code base in one way or another. So I added a PR that was merged, I think 2 days ago, that now includes those. Initially, we did it privately in Notion just to, test it, poke holes in it, see if it works. And now we have them live in the Stencil code base. So if you go to /docs/ADR, you'll see a list of 7 ADRs that we've already began drafting. And there's so many more things that we can do to communicate how code is organized in the Stencil code base, or what things do for what intent and all those kinds of things. I consider ADRs like they're standards. They, first document the decisions that you make, and maybe later on that decision doesn't make sense. And so you can make a new ADR to supersede another one that didn't make sense. So you can make a new, better decision, but also communicate that with not just like Ryan and I as a team, and not just Ionic as a company, but also everybody publicly. It also gives us a chance to sort of like post ideas, to propose concepts, and have one place where we can like really hash out that idea before we even code it, which I think is really helpful, especially for like cool, interesting, or new features that we just don't quite know yet how to do correctly. We can use one document in a PR, make an ADR talking about, oh, I don't know, someone said this in the chat already, Storybook. Like, what's the best way to make Storybook integration work, and what are the pitfalls, and what are all the other things that we need to work out? And then we get to, figure out how to make that possible and helpful and more documented. So yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I will admit ADR was like a relatively new acronym for me until we typed it out earlier and I saw the actual doc or the directory in the repo. So would it be safe to say like some of these these ADRs are kind of like the compiled resolutions from like an RFC or a request for comments or something like in that sense, where if there's like a feature that you are really passionate about working on, let's go ahead and reuse the same kind of feature that we're seeing. The Storybook integration, we could have a request for comments where we could go over what the proposal would be, and then afterwards, like you could take that whole entire RFC, throw it not like a recap, but like a step-by-step process of here are some of the things that we faced in the RFC. Now that we know all the potential issues. Here's why we did what we did.
Exactly. You can start to plan before you code and communicate like some of the challenges that you may bump into as you're coding, or even we're using some in a historical sense. A lot of those are covering things that exist in the repo today. But yeah, you get to use it as I hope that we get to use it as a place to request for comments, like you're saying. I think it'd be awesome to engage the community with new features and try to understand challenges and stuff like that.
Awesome, because I know it's how many code bases have people looked at where they're going through all the commits, trying to understand why did this happen? What's going on here? And there's no, I guess, official story behind, why do we use this implementation versus another implementation, or why do we use this dependency versus other dependencies? This at least can kind of give people some background into why things have been done the way they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know there's something else that has been pretty awesome to know, or to to share at least somewhat for our needs. And this, we have like Stencil learning sessions, which have been really fun to watch. Kind of walk through the whole entire compiler process. I've gotten to see a few of them that you all have been running. I'd be pretty interested to post those, or like write a blog post. Ryan, can I get you to write a blog post on how the compiler works?
How many words does it have to be? If it's under 70,000, I don't know.
Well, we can do a multi-part series. We don't have to do it all at once.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, maybe. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So, in a sense of the, we have this is a really good question that I'm going to save for later. So, in some of the, this is you guys getting up to speed. What are some things that you're, would like to work on in the, I guess, the near-term future?
Yeah, so as I said earlier on, one of the things that this is a whole new space for me. So a lot of this is really trying to see, what the community. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So a lot of this is, what does the community want, and how can we serve Stencil best? And one of the biggest things that people have been asking for quite some time are source maps. So that's something that we're committing to in Q3 to work through. We've got a community member who goes by the GitHub handle John Jenkins, who's put up an awesome PR that the team and I have been reviewing. Will's taken the first pass at it, and we're gonna continue to work with this individual to kind of see what we can do to land this quarter. So big shout out to John Jenkins. We really appreciate this. This PR is awesome.
Shout out to John Jenkins for all of that work. I saw the PR.
Yeah, great work, John. Really, thank you.
Wherever you may be, great work. So other than like source maps, what are some things that you would also like to plan on doing?
Right.
Not a guarantee.
Never a guarantee. So there are two things that we've also identified that we'd really like to start to tackle this quarter. The first of which is framework bindings. So you write your components in Stencil, and you compile them, and you want to use them in, say, React or Vue or Angular. One of the things that we've noticed, and a lot of things that one thing that the community has repeatedly asked for is, to try to galvanize those bindings a little bit, make them a little more production ready, a little easier to use, put better documentation under them. So we're going to have a joint effort with the Ionic Framework team this quarter, wherein we start to look into this and see the ways in which we can improve these bindings, both for the framework as well as the community as a whole. Really just trying to make everyone's lives a little bit easier when it comes to working with these bindings, because it hasn't always been the easiest. And then finally, we're going to start to look at modernizing testing within Stencil. Our first pass is probably going to be a little high level. We're going to dive into this a little further in Q4 of this year. But our first attempt at this is going to be allowing people to use a newer version of Jest, which is Jest 27, which has a bunch of improvements and breaking changes in it. So Will and I are looking into adding Jest 27 support to Stencil, and we've already taken our first pass at that. We've got a good idea as to what we need to do. Trying to do this without adding any breaking changes, but we're gonna focus on that for a part of this quarter as well.
It's a perfect timing that you mentioned that, because we had a comment on support for testing frameworks like Jest. So I know that Jest has somehow has become the almost de facto in the JavaScript community. So it's great to see that. But are there any other plans to kind of make it more generic, or open it up to different kind of testing frameworks, or different kind of tests in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the really neat things that Stencil has out of the box is the Snapshot Testing, which the framework team here uses pretty extensively for testing. So one of the initiatives that we're going to take on, not this quarter, but next, is different ways we can evolve that testing strategy, whether that be quality of life improvements for the framework team, which the community as well can take advantage of. As well as just looking at what other libraries and what else is out there in the ecosystem that we could potentially use within a Stencil project, or a series of Stencil components. We don't have a lot of firm details on that right now, but it's something that the team and I are actively discussing and thinking about for sure.
Well, our friend who asked about Jest support would like to recommend apparently Cypress, which I know we on the framework team are big fans of the stuff that they do. So I don't know if my vote for anything really sways your opinion, but Cypress is pretty cool.
Absolutely, it does. That's great to know.
Awesome. So we posted some questions, or posted a doc for people to ask questions earlier in the week. We got a few questions here that I think these are some really good jumping off points, or good discussion points. So I kind of want to go over a few of these, and I've shared the doc with you both. There's one great question about the Stencil, the component bindings or the framework bindings, and wanting to be able to customize how those things work. Trying to understand, could you swap out one implementation of how things get built with different tools? Is there any plan or hope? I guess this question's wanting to know, is there any plan to make these things more flexible and open-ended?
Yeah, so that's a good question. As I said, we're looking to engage with the framework team here at Ionic and try to see where the pain points are and see what we can make better this quarter. And that, to be clear, that's from August to October in our world. Right now, at this particular moment, we don't have any specific plans to support open-ended bundling or tooling around these bindings. However, if that's something that the community wants, we're super receptive to things like that. So if there's not already an issue in GitHub, if someone wanted to create it and was willing to put in that time, and then if the rest of the community could give it that little thumbs up emoji, that's a great signal to us that this is something that the community really wants, and that definitely would bump it up on our priority list as far as things to investigate and consider for the future of Stencil.
Yeah, definitely react with the emojis, the thumbs up, +1s, and random comments like "bump, this is great." Definitely love. We can't index those apparently, at least in GitHub. So the more reactions that we can actually look at and say, yes, 100 people want us to switch out the roll up to ES build or something silly like that, definitely helps us. on the same topic, we have framework integration. Should people still be using the Stencil output targets or the DS targets? Generally, not even 100% sure what they're called sometimes.
That's fair, and I think, to be honest, that was a point of confusion internally at first as well. So the DS targets, or the design system targets, they're the same thing when we're talking about these framework bindings, and those are the very things that we realize the documentation is a little bit lacking. So that's what we're really focusing on to this quarter, in order to really get an idea around, like, here's how you should use these things, and here's an example as to how you can get started. That's something that we're definitely going to be focusing on as a part of this, to kind of flesh out the documentation a little bit more, so that way we can make it abundantly clear, this is how you can use Stencil in your Angular app, and here's how you use it in your React app. But yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking into.
I know with few use cases of the output targets, like I know we use the Vue one currently, and unfortunately, I don't think Framework uses the Angular or the React one for historical reasons. But I know we are very excited to be able to switch over and use those internally, so that way we can have like a much more uniform kind of process, and everything is just nice and simple and automated, and we don't have any custom code that we need to write. It's all just part of the system. Plus, I mean, I would assume it's better for the community, since we can all just use the same tooling. This next question, now this isn't directed towards anybody, so feel free if you have any strong opinions on this. Do you plan on supporting non-virtual DOM?
Right now, no, but it's a really good question. And I would love to see some folks proposing some ADRs, or even just figuring out how to have a helpful discussion in a GitHub issue about this. There are really nice things about JSX, and I think that that's the big draw to Stencil, especially from we see a recurring theme around people and Stencil and their love of JSX. And I certainly, personally, I'm going to do personal opinions time. Syntax with lit or those tag template literals, sometimes Vue, don't feel exactly how personally I like to write JavaScript. So like on-click handlers being prepended with a little @ symbol, those kinds of syntactic sugar for that behavior, is hard to, I think, understand how to make work in multiple contexts, especially for like TypeScript, or how we want to really compile down to not have less, as minimum runtime as possible. So let's have a conversation about it, definitely worth it. Ryan, what do you think? Oh, did you lose me? Did you say something?
Yeah, he's muted.
Oh, gotcha.
I muted myself in the event the fuzzy audio was still recurring. Yeah, I would agree. Like, let's put an RFC together and let's talk about it. Again, a lot of the features that we want to put in Stencil are going to be driven by the community and the asks of the community. So, we've had a few initial surveys that we've sent out, and we've gotten responses back from the community. We've talked to individuals in the community one-on-one who are using it. And all of that feedback is greatly appreciated, and it's definitely helping us shape, the direction that we take with Stencil. So as such, RFCs and things of similar ilk, are definitely well received and are definitely being used to help figure out what we want to do next with this product.
That's a great point to kind of promote. If there's any features or anything that you as a community member would like to see, in Stencil, open an issue. If you're especially ambitious, open up a pull request. I know, as any open source maintainer, pull requests definitely help get the ball rolling, but having a well thought out issue where everything can be discussed beforehand definitely helps get things going. But get involved. We'd love to see a lot of community contributions here. Um, just to do even some of the simple stuff. No, so check out Stencil's issue tracker and our pull requests. If there's something you want to take action on, let us know. We'd love to help you out. This next question that I think is a really good one because it lot of potential for other ideas. Does the team have any tools from the Stencil ecosystem in mind, and would like to plan to continue releasing updates? So, what other tools in the Stencil ecosystem do we want to keep, supporting and pushing updates for officially?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, honestly. I think if you go into the NPM registry now, there is something like 20 at Stencil scoped packages that are published right now. And honestly, as someone who's kind of coming into this ecosystem fresh, for the first time, and as I was trying to get the lay of the land, it was almost a little bit intimidating to see how many things we had published in all these different, variations and ways people are using Stencil, which is awesome. But at the same time, it's like, oh man, I've got a lot to learn. Outside of just the core compiler itself, it's almost a little overwhelming. And I think that, well, before we dive into what we want to do, Will, do you want to share any thoughts that you have? Because you've been using Stencil, much longer than I have.
Yeah, since it was released almost every day. So I think about just how many different packages I've used, and also the journey of, for example, some community members would understand this, the Stencil state tunnel versus Stencil store, and when to use what, and what's supported, router, v2, those kinds of things. I recognize that there's a lot that Stencil has. Yeah, so go ahead, Ryan.
No,
that is an understatement. There's a lot that Stencil has.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really good that I think that's arguably a really good strength that the team has right now, wherein Will is coming from the background of somebody who's used Stencil, just like he said, every day since it was released, and I'm also coming at it from just with a different perspective, and I think that the mashup of those two is going to be really, and has been really beneficial, as we're starting to figure out how we work well together as a team and how we work on Stencil.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
But as it pertains specifically to all of these different modules that we have, honestly, Will and I are a team of 2 right now, of full-time engineers working on Stencil. So we recognize that we're not going to be able to look at every single PR of every single one of these packages 24/7. What we do know, and what we do believe, is that we need to create this shared understanding of as a team, what the community really loves, what's getting used right now and what's missing. And I think I had mentioned this earlier, wherein we're trying to get feedback from the community in both talking to people one-on-one and via that survey that we sent out. We're starting to get some early signal as to different packages that are being used and at what frequency. Within our next release of Stencil, we have completely anonymized and opt-outable telemetry that's going to be able to give us a little bit of insight as to which Stencil packages are being used. And I think that that's going to be a really nice, relatively unbiased signal as to, what do we need to put effort towards? What do we need to focus on? Because the community is really using this package and it hasn't gotten any love. So that's something that we know that we need to do. We don't have concrete plans because we don't know exactly what we need to work on yet. But we're hoping as data starts rolling in after this first release and folks start upgrading to the latest version of Stencil, we can kind of firm plans up and hopefully share some of that with the community.
Well, we already have a little sentiment from one community member that we are doing a great job. Well, not we, you two are doing a great job. I take credit for nothing other than just sitting here.
Well, thank you both mics.
Thank you both.
I mean, it is very interesting because, like, if there's like 20 plus packages, that is a full-time job staying on top of every single release that ever happens, understanding that, as well as working on the compiler and all the tools that we have. So yeah, telemetry is needed. Let us know what you use and what you would like us to continue either supporting or working on. And this really plays well into the next question. Is there any like thought or like feelings on letting outside collaborators be involved or help maintain some of these packages? Two people obviously can't do that all by themselves and still work. So has that been brought up before?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's definitely room within the community, especially some of these community-driven packages where, it's kind of a labor of love where, people really love Stencil and they also really love, some other piece of tooling that's a part of their, their day-to-day. I think there's definitely room for that. We have a little bit of prior art for that within Ionic already with the capacitor community, wherein, developers are not necessarily the sole maintainers of packages that are, in this community, but there's also individuals who are really passionate about these plugins, and we can collaborate there. Developers from the Stencil core team can definitely contribute back, but we also would love to be welcoming folks from all over the community to be collaborating and contributing back to some community plugins or community libraries that we have today. We don't have any definitive plans for if and when we would roll something like that out. The reason for which is that it's a pretty big undertaking, and right now Will and I are still working on doing some learning, some forming and storming of the team, and trying to get some initial features out. However, if you or you yourself or someone who is a product manager who is looking for a new opportunity, we're looking for a product manager. So we would love to have that, or love to have someone, and that would definitely help expedite, initiatives like that.
Get the link for it real quick. We have several jobs actually open for Ionic. If you go to, I think it's like ionic.io/jobs. Product manager is one role, or product manager is one role that we have available. But yeah, everyone, I guess, we all want to be able to give everything and everyone the power to be able to like maintain this massive ecosystem. Takes time. Stencil, like capacitor community wasn't born overnight, and it still continues to grow. But there is a lot of initial investment to get it up there. So if you are interested in something like that, bear with us while we get up and running. Would love to see that happen myself. Let's see. Last few questions. Okay. So we actually have a few questions that came in from the community that I really, really like, because we've also heard this quite a bit from a few of us. So kind of let's bring it up. This is from Matt in the chat. Any future plans to allow extending native elements or other web components?
Mind if I take this one? So this one is interesting. I really would like to make an ADR about this, because it's also a pain that I've experienced, and yet it can also introduce challenges, because I think, if memory serves, Safari has, I don't know if they've improved this or are improving it in newer versions of Safari, but They've been reluctant to even support other parts of this, so that can make that challenging. And also, there's a part of me that wants to wait for the accessibility object model. What's that called? Oh gosh, the accessibility object model, because that's going to help in a pretty huge way to understand how your components can function correctly. So if we can make an issue and have a good, healthy conversation about doing that, I would love to see that happen, and I would absolutely be engaged there too. I think that it's a huge thing, right? Lit does it, and it's generally built into the spec that you can extend, even like a button, so that you don't have to write all those accessibility features yourself. So that a button can, or even inputs can be integrated into forms if they're especially under a Shadow DOM. So yeah, definitely. Let's have a conversation about it. I really want to have a good conversation about this for sure.
I know. Well, the last time I was speaking with someone about this, we were like, all right, well, if you extend a button, like, how does that whole accessibility idea happen? And I was like, you mean it just wouldn't? It wouldn't just happen?
No.
So, there's like a great point. Like you've brought it up a couple times where like the specs, like following web specs and web standards, and how those processes evolve. If we're not up to date with how like the accessibility object model, like how some of those things like progress through or form participation.
Yeah.
None of this is really going to be. There's going to be a lot of quirky bits of code inside the code base, but everything else, fingers crossed, hopefully should make this whole process pretty easy and painless moving forward.
Yeah. So I'm excited about seeing more of those specs emerge and reach stage 4 and actually be incorporated into browsers, not just Chrome, not just Edge, but all other browsers.
Firefox as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's one question that came up. Are there any remote opportunities on the team? Yes. Ionic is 100% remote. Unfortunately, at the moment, USA only. So if you're in the US and you would love to work on some pretty cool technology, join us. We'd love to have you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Come help us make Stencil better.
Yeah, come help us make Stencil better and build out pretty cool integrations with other tools. There's one last thing on here that it doesn't look like it was thought out too much. It just says Storybook.
Yeah, that was me, because someone had mentioned Storybook. Like, is there a community Storybook in chat? So I, as someone who's used Stencil for so long, I recognize the pain of not having a good documented Storybook setup, and also some of the challenges that Storybook has today. Those kinds of, I'm calling them integrations. They might be referred to a different term or something like that later on down the road, but like effectively like how Storybook works, even things like Lerna, and some of the weird complexities that Lerna has that aren't necessarily compatible with Stencil today. I understand those pains just as folks in the community do too. So definitely there's going to be attention paid to that. It just takes time and preparedness. We want to make sure that we do it right? And we don't introduce something that just isn't, that wouldn't work or is too rushed. And we want to make sure, like Ryan had said, there's a shared understanding of these features and integrations and what our level of support is for those things. If, Storybook ships something that totally breaks the integration that, we wrote with Stencil, like what does it look like for us to keep that up, and how quickly do we need to get that out? Those kinds of things. But yeah, and exactly what's showing up down on the bottom right there over here. Josh is
there.
Josh is pointing out that there is a storybook channel in the Stencil Slack, and I'm also pretty active there too. I'm always paying attention to that channel because storybook and the community effort around how the integration works is going to inform how we produce something that actually is like a supported integration. So yeah, anything to fill in there, Ryan? You're muted. Oh,
I think, yeah, sorry. Yeah, clicking is hard apparently. But yeah, no, I think you hit that, pretty much nail on the head there. Again, we're listening to the community, and that's what's going to help drive parts of our roadmap. So again, however we can get some input from the community, whether that be through RFCs, through, our telemetry program, however that may be, we're listening, and we're definitely, open to any and all feedback.
So the moral of this little office hour is, yes, we would like to do things. We don't know what we should be working on. We would like you to tell us what we should be working on. I think the general gist of any open source project, we can only focus on so many things. So whatever is going to be best helpful for the community, as things that we should be prioritizing and trying to work on. So definitely love love that sentiment, and I love the idea of having to find out what we need to know.
Yeah, and thanks for the patience during this process, because it really means a lot. Like to be able to get all of our ducks in a row so that we can give you the best open source product. Like the patience it means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah,
big thank you to the community for that.
Yeah, I want to just reiterate that I've looked at PRs that are months old, whether they be on the Stencil compiler or the Stencil site, and people have been nothing but kind and gracious with the fact that we took our foot off the gas for a little bit. So I want to say thank you for that as well.
Yeah, we'll get there. We will.
It's Stencil is one of those projects that it has a lot of potential to keep on going and be around for forever. So we want to make sure that everything's in a good position, and we won't let you down.
Yeah. Retweet.
Retweet. Quote tweet Mike Hardington. We won't let you down. We'll be around forever. Put them all like super bold caps, just like forever.
I'm gonna make that my Twitter bio.
Yeah, lovely. Well, we're coming up on the time here. I want to kind of give the mic back to you both. If there's anything else that you would like to say to the community, or anything else that you would like to highlight, the floor is yours for a few seconds.
Awesome. Well, I guess first and foremost, again, I just want to reiterate, thank you for all of your patience. Second, if there is something that you're looking for, to give, the community concrete steps, like how do we get our voices heard? Again, giving it the little thumbs up emoji on GitHub issues and PRs, it's a great way and easy way to signal to us that, this is something that, you're interested in, this is something that you want. And then finally, Mike, thank you for hosting us and having us and keeping the conversation flowing, because I know I am not great at talking sometimes.
Oh, come on. You're a natural. We'll have you on a podcast no matter what.
Yeah. You say that now. Be careful what you wish for.
Never heard. Well?
Yeah, I think Ryan took the words out of my mouth. And we'll be around. And thanks so much for the patience. And thank you, Mike, for hosting. Like, this was so seamless, and I appreciate it.
Well, we have a good way to end it. So cheers, folks. Have some tea, coffee, water. We hope to see you back here with the next office hours. But for now, take care and have a lovely rest of your afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time it may be Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Yeah.